I'd like to open up the City of Littleton City Council virtual regular meeting for Tuesday, September 15, 2020. The time now is 6:30 or 18:30. City Clerk or Acting City Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes, Mayor Valdez.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Mullen.
Here.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Present.
Councilmember Elrod.
Here.
Councilmember Fay.
Here.
Councilmember Grove.
Here.
Councilmember Milliman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. And also Sam Fox, the assistant to the city attorney, if you could please tell us how this meeting will proceed.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, staff, citizens, and guests. I'm Sam Fox, assistant to the city manager, and I'll be serving as the moderator for this evening's virtual council meeting. We are streaming this meeting on cable channel 8, Facebook, and on our website, littletongov.org. Please be aware, comments left on Facebook Live will not be moderated and will not be included in the meeting minutes. Those wishing to participate in any public comment portion of the meeting are advised to view the meeting at littletongov.org under My Littleton, Littleton 8 TV, as this broadcast has the least amount of delay. The agenda will be handled by Mayor Valdez in the same way it would be handled for a regular in-person meeting. As always, public participation is encouraged during public comment and public hearings. To participate via phone, please call 669-900-6833. And when prompted, enter the webinar ID 920-1317-2084. There will be one opportunity for participation this evening during public comment. If you wish to speak during public comment, please call and stay on the line. Again, the number is 669-900-6833. When prompted, the webinar ID is 920-1317-2084. When public comment is announced, please press *9 to raise your hand and be recognized as the speaker. Microphones will be muted for all citizens calling in. Citizens can press *9 to raise their hand and be recognized. Speakers will have 3 minutes to address council. The city clerk will announce when you have 30 seconds remaining, and again when your time is up. We expect comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. For agenda items, Mayor Valdez will ask for a motion and a second, followed by discussion and a vote. Council will vote on agenda items using a thumbs up for a yes vote and a thumbs down for a no vote. The clerk will call each vote with all ayes and nays. Again, if you plan on participating during public comment, please call 669-900-6833. When prompted, enter the webinar ID 920-1317-2084. Please stay on the line and press *9 to raise your hand to speak. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you very much, Emma. All right, Council, you've seen the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Move down to our comments and report, and we'll start with the city manager.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. And city attorney?
No report. Thank you, Mayor.
Great. We'll start with Council Member Milliman.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. Just a couple of updates. Hope everybody's filled out their census and still wearing your mask out in public. It's working. Also, I wanted to say thank you to boards and commissions for the incredibly lovely gift basket to us. Really, really appreciate that. It was such a nice gesture. On September 15th, my son and I actually went to a new business that just opened on Littleton Boulevard. Well, they haven't officially opened, they're opening in January, but they're having Thursday night get-togethers. It's called Lost Coffee. It's in the old ARC donation site. It's in the corner of Littleton Boulevard and Gallup. And really good group of people. They own a coffee shop in Castle Rock, and they wanted to come to Littleton because Littleton is such a livable, walkable city, and I'm just so excited. Their coffee is fantastic. They're going to be roasting right on site. So I would highly suggest if you could go over there on a Thursday, late afternoon, please do so. And then this past Saturday, a group of friends and I volunteered with the Highline Canal Conservancy for brush removal. There's a section of the Highline Canal that the city of Littleton is now responsible for keeping clear for the flow of stormwater. And a group of 20 of us met on Saturday morning and cleared out the canal. And I will tell you, it was such a great morning, and it was super satisfying to clear out that canal of all the debris. It was really fun. They have another date coming up on September 26th. So you can find them on Facebook or on their webpage, but they're looking for some eager volunteers. And not only was I there, but Carolyn Roan from the city was there as well, from Public Works. So it was really good to work alongside with her. And then just a quick update, South Metro Housing Options had their board meeting last week. Molly Fitzpatrick gave the same presentation to them as she did to us. There was a lot of great dialogue and questions and lively discussion about it. So that was really, really beneficial. And also Emma Mallory, she is the new director of Libby Bortz, and she gave us an update about Libby Bortz. She's fantastic. And then also just one last thing, I guess South Metro Housing Option recently opened up and then closed the waiting list at Allison Court. And we'll be opening up the list at a couple of other properties in the next couple of months. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Grove and then Faye. You are muted, Pam.
Douglas County had a breakfast meeting that I went to and talked about their goals to eliminate homelessness. And they have a step-by-step process where they triage a person who's in an emergency situation, try to find them housing, and then try to get other organizations to help them out. So it was a very aggressive way that they're going about preventing homelessness. So that was of interest. We also met with South Suburban, Karina, Keith, Mark, and I, and talked about a couple issues. One was Little Creek. One of my fellow councilmen brought that to our attention, that there was a lot of garbage there, and Public Works went and cleaned that out. There was also some other issues that they are addressing on the more of the long-term strategy. Second thing we talked about with South Suburban was Ridgeview Pond. We'll hear more about this, but as you well know, this used to be a pond that was populated by water from the Highline Canal. The Highline Canal is no longer running. And so they really don't have any water rights. And the citizens that live in that area are very concerned about the look of the pond. And staff in South Suburban have been looking at various alternatives. They're still not ready to present options to the community because of the expense of so many things, like one-time filling it up, which doesn't seem feasible because you have to have a long-term plan in terms of making sure the water would stay there. And there's a variety of other alternatives that they're looking at that they will also address, and then get those options and present to City Council and then discuss them with the citizens. We also discussed Powers Park. The South Metro Land Conservancy brought to Council some ideas for improvements, which we discussed with South Suburban. Right now, they're looking at money issues, so it probably won't be on the top of the list right now. And they were going to get back to the representatives from the Conservancy and talk to them. We need to talk with South Suburban about updating their master plan, which they hope to do later this month, and then do a good job of coordinating between the city and South Suburban on our priorities. Last night, I attended a meeting with the Next Gen group, and we met with Public Works Department, Keith Reister, and had a good exchange of information about sustainability, and it was broader than that. And as a result of that meeting, they came away with quite a few suggestions from Keith in terms of how they might further some discussion. And they're going to take all of that list and then narrow it down with the subcommittee, and then I'll bring it back to council for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council Member Fay and then Elrod.
This has to do with homeless and the city policy. The Tri-Cities, you've heard me say this before, are Littleton, Sheridan, and Inglewood, and we're working together to approach the policy difficulties that might be in place that make it more difficult to deal with homelessness all the way around. The three cities were approached by an organization called Bridge House, and Bridge House has a grant from the Google Foundation to do a pre-feasibility study for a new site for a pretty exciting program called Ready to Work. And what it's about is carefully selecting, screening for motivation primarily people who are experiencing homelessness, and then to put them in a program for an extended amount of time to learn to do jobs such as groundskeeping and food service. So that is something that very well may happen in the Tri-Cities soon. That's all.
Great, thank you very much. Council Member Elrod, then Driscoll.
I went down to Weekends on Main and Dining on Main the past couple of weekends. Both have been still very active. Lots of people down there, which is good to see. Actually, this past weekend, got to look at the chalk art that on Main Street in Nevada. So there's a big hole, or there was a big hole on Main Street. It was brilliant. It was really fun. Went down there.
There appeared to be
with Councilmember Milliman, and so that was just great to see, and just something else to meander and play around with. And actually got some good feedback from Vanessa from Jake's Brew Pub, that she's really appreciative of the event planner or event people that are there helping with the cleanup on Saturday night. So that it's very helpful to them because that's a lot of work getting those tables out there, getting them back in. So just wanted to extend that gratitude to everyone. Littleton Arts and Culture Commission met in person. It was fantastic actually to meet in person. There was a lot of dialogue, a lot of discussion. We worked through a lot of items. This is the first time we're meeting. I think this is the first time we're meeting in person, obviously, since COVID. And prior to that, I think we only had one other opportunity to meet in person. So that was important for us because we were a new board, and the Zoom meetings were difficult, obviously. Given that it was a new board. So we got actually quite a bit done. We began ranking projects and initiatives that were, in the broader spectrum of arts and culture, from music to fine art to performance. So we looked at that from, what's accessible, what's sustainable, what's a fit to the resources that we have in Littleton. That was a really great dialogue. And we also began to evaluate some of the various funding mechanisms that we can explore further as a city. And then just a couple of announcements of what's coming up on that front, in particular from our partners. So Town Hall Art Center, I mentioned this before, they have Almost Denver playing as outdoor theater at Hudson Gardens. So that started last weekend, and I think it's going through October. So please go check that out. It's in the Rose Garden at Hudson Gardens. The Plein Air Festival at Aspen Grove is happening this upcoming weekend, September 19th. So this is where artists are scattered throughout the city and they're painting live scenes of Littleton. So it's really fun to watch them perform or do their artwork, as well as just see the results, because it's those beautiful places that.
When is that again, Karina?
September 19th.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Arapahoe Philharmonic is doing concerts in the parking lot this Friday, next Friday, and Friday, October 2nd. The parking lots are different churches. Mission Hills in Littleton is going to be Friday, October 2nd at 5:30 p.m. So if you could go check out some of the great work that's being done by our local organizations, it will be a treat. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Councilmember Driscoll.
I really don't have much to report. I have nothing to report. The other council members did a great job of stealing my thunder, so I'm good.
All right. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. As far as Main Street and closing on Main Street, and even without the Main Street being closed, many of the establishments down there do have live music, and it's becoming quite the place to go to for live music, the downtown area, and just many of the establishments down there have some great music. The only other thing I have here is just to remind our audience and council that immediately after this meeting, which should be a short meeting, we have a study session following. So that's what we have. We're going to move on now. We have no citizens' appearances tonight, but we will move to our public comments. It is 6:46, and Sama Fox, if you could please tell us, please inform the audience how they can participate.
Thank you, Mayor. If you wish to address City Council under public comment, please call 669-900-6833. And when prompted, enter the webinar ID 920-1317-2084. Press *9 to be recognized. Citizen microphones will be automatically muted until a citizen is called upon to speak by the last 3 digits of their phone number. Please state your name and district or address clearly for the record. A reminder, the clerk will notify you when you have 30 seconds remaining and again when your time is up. Public comment is an opportunity to express opinions or ask questions regarding issues that are not part of public hearings on tonight's agenda. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will notify you when you have 30 seconds remaining and again when your time is up. The City Council is not authorized by the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at the meeting on any issue raised by public comment that is not part of tonight's agenda. The mayor may refer the matter to the city manager or the city attorney for immediate comment after public comment, or to staff to obtain additional information and report back to council as appropriate. We expect comments to be civil. Disrespectful or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. Mayor, we currently have 8 callers on the line, 2 raised hands. So just a reminder, if you're in our calling queue, press *9 if you'd like to speak. The first caller that we're going to recognize is caller 918. Caller 918, you have been unmuted. Please begin speaking. Mayor, council, there is a step where they need to unmute themselves after we announce they've begun speaking, so that might be the gap we're seeing. Caller 918.
Can you hear me now?
Well, I hear you now.
This is Julie. Okay, thank you. This is Julie Hall. I've lived here in Littleton for 8 years with my husband, Rob, and my 3 children. And we've lived in right in downtown Littleton. And then in the last couple of years, we've lived just across Santa Fe in the neighborhood by Centennial Academy. So I live in Littleton. I work in downtown Littleton. We love to enjoy the downtown area. And we also have our kids in Littleton Public Schools. And I just want to share a little bit of advocacy tonight towards one of our 5 core values of our comprehensive plan, which is inclusivity, and just some of the goals around that were voted on, I believe, a year ago, are quantity and diversity of housing. And I know that City Council is working specifically on housing and some important decisions in the next few weeks. And I would just love to advocate for lots of adequate housing for those who want to be in Littleton. And I just want to share a quick story. I have a friend who's lived in Littleton in and out for the last 20 years. And she is not able to advocate for herself, but I would like to do that for her. She moved here in 2000, and a year later, her husband died tragically, and then a few years later she had a stroke, and one of her significant struggles in all of that is not having an adequate support system, and then a struggle with having adequate housing. And in all of that, her son was able to come up through the Village, Centennial, Goddard, and Littleton High School, so all the way through our school system. But for both of them, they've really struggled with housing, and I've seen the significant impact that's had on their mental and physical health and really all aspects of their lives. So just them as one example, but I know there are so many who love Littleton and feel like it's a safe place for them. And I would just love to see us continually work towards adequate housing that's inclusive of all people who want to live here. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you, Julie. We can please have our next caller.
Thank you. The next caller is caller 363. Caller 363, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hi there. I think I am unmuted.
You are.
Can you all hear me?
I hear you
good.
just fine.
This is Heather Quiroga. I am a proud Littleton resident. I've been here for 10 years, but I've been in Colorado since 1997. I've been watching Littleton for a long time. I was drawn to Littleton mainly because of the schools. I have 2 children in the Littleton public school system, one of whom has a learning disability. And I have been so very impressed with the care and the attention that we got here in our public schools. And honestly, that would not have happened where we were in Denver. So I'm very grateful to be here and happy to be here in this town. I'm also calling, this is the first time I've called into a city meeting and actually am sort of newly engaged in this way, but I am absolutely in support of the phase code amendment to the zoning. The reason is that I would like to see more diversity here. It's a beautiful place to live, and we should be thinking in a more inclusive way. And that means making it possible for people of all socioeconomic strata to be here. So I've had many conversations with lots of people who've been here for a long time. And I absolutely appreciate and support that one of the draws to Littleton is our historic Main Street. The fact that we have maintained a sense of who we are. I include me in the we, that I've been here for 10 years, because I have been nothing but involved with the PTO, with local volunteerism. I work with Break Bread to help, I helped them set up part of their board system. I'm very proud to be here and very, very proud to call myself a Littletonian. But, and I used to work for Historic Denver. I was the communications director for this nonprofit that works to maintain the integrity and the historic character of places like Littleton that are rare and special because we protect our sacred historic places. These are not two things that are combative in my mind. These are not mutually exclusive, that I am for positive, progressive, low
30 seconds.
income, affordable housing. Thank you. And that I support Main Street. I want Main Street to maintain its integrity. We can do the new zoning phase 2 up to 5 stories and create lots of opportunity for lots of people to appreciate all the things we love about Littleton.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you. Just a reminder to any callers in our queue, if you have not already pressed *9, please go ahead and press *9 to be recognized. Our next caller will be caller 592. Caller 592, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bobby Endike, and I am a Littleton resident of, now about almost 6 years now. I am a volunteer pastor at a local church here in the area. I've got 3 kiddos who go to Runyon, and I live right across the street from Heritage High School. And one of the things that I've really appreciated is, first, I would like just to echo the previous callers. I'd like to just tell just a quick story around a foster family that we have been working with, and as foster parents here in the community, we've been able to build relationships with families who are a little bit more of the vulnerable residents in the area. They would love to be connected a little bit closer to just the support and all of the things that Littleton has to offer, but primarily because of their socioeconomic status and the recent trends indicating that a lot of residents can be priced out as prices increase. I would like to advocate for other housing options like the previous couple of callers have had. I'm a Colorado native, born and raised here, and I love all of the things that Littleton has to offer. And also knowing Littleton's history, where Littleton has historically been able to balance the housing stock and the commitment to address some of the needs of the vulnerable residents here, but also knowing that recent trends are pushing prices upward. I would love to see families who have connections in the area and would love to find that additional support and affordability within Littleton. I think that would be a win for both parties involved, for the economy of downtown Littleton, which is amazing, for the schools that have amazing things to offer, and also for families who definitely want that inclusive and diverse atmosphere that I know Littleton can offer as well. So I would just like to advocate for additional housing options. Thank you. And I would just like to advocate for additional housing options and to continue the good work that's going on. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next caller.
Thank you. Our next caller is caller 493. Caller 493, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Frank Atwood from District 4. And as Joni Mitchell feared, you're not turning downtown Littleton into a parking lot yet. After the current developers sell their 5-story properties, do you believe there will be 7-story investors continuing to contribute to your campaigns? We are all financially concerned with downtown Littleton's growth. However, I cannot promise you or your successor campaign dollars. Even those dollars and their sociability may dry up if you make only a 5-story decision. Thanks to COVID-19, I have been getting close to 10,000 steps per day, which includes the Jackass Hill overlook. From that overlook, I can scan Pikes Peak to the south, Mount Evans to the west, and both Longs Peak and Denver skyline to the north. A majestically humbling view. What makes it even more humbling is being there on Jackass Hill and knowing that Chuck Reed has christened me as a wingnut. How can I not be humbled? Like Mark Rudnicki, I am the nut trying to tighten down on excessive height growth downtown. When driving north on Prince Street and cresting the railroad tracks, I see the Littleton skyline against the Denver skyline. I wonder why anyone would want to destroy downtown Littleton's small town feel. I hope there is a council member who will propose a motion like Mark Rudnicki and Robin Schwartzbacker's 55-foot, 4 stories max height limit downtown. Unlike the Planning Commission, you are closer to the voters and are held more accountable. Thank you. And don't pave Paradise or put up a 5-story parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate it. Our next caller, please.
Next caller is 342. Caller 342, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council and City Manager and City Attorney. This is Kyle Schlachter, District 2. I just have a few things that I wanted to briefly comment on tonight. I just wanted, I guess, like a few of the other callers, express my support for some of those Phase 2 amendments in the ULUC. I think you guys will discuss that next week. And I see some positive changes that will potentially make downtown a more inclusive and accessible place for all sorts of people to come. Second, tonight in your study session, I see you talking about short-term rentals. I'm looking forward to that discussion. And then third and finally, I wanted to address the mayor specifically. Mayor Valdez, Jerry, I speak to you as a friend, but also as an engaged and concerned voter. The way many of these meetings have been run over the past 10 months, just hasn't been up to the standards they should. At the last meeting, an amendment was put forth and voted on, and there wasn't even a main motion on the floor, and that shouldn't happen. A few meetings ago, you directed Councilmember Fay to be a timekeeper, which resulted in obnoxious interruptions of guests and other council members. You've called Littleton residents wimps, and you've repeatedly made inappropriate political comments that are not pertinent to municipal issues or policies. You equated mask wearing and COVID to abortions. And then 2 weeks ago, during a recess, the phone line still live, people listening. I was shocked to hear you make comments about wishing that the NBA would go out of business. These comments are irresponsible, out of place in a public setting, and unbefitting of the position of mayor of Littleton. So, I again say this as a friend and an engaged and considered resident. I hope you can be more thoughtful and professional and cognizant of what it means to be mayor going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your personal criticism. Next caller, please.
Next caller is caller 418. Caller 418, please press *mute to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
I hear you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So my name is Andrew. My family and I, we've lived in Littleton since 2014, and I just wanted to join tonight and just voice just some concerns that we have with some of the discussions about the restrictions for the construction that you guys are looking at possibly doing. I know that these type of buildings allow for different people of different economic levels to be able to stay in Littleton. And I know as my daughter's friends in Centennial Academy have had to leave due to some of the high prices of the housing and rent, I know that this is a real concern. And I also realize that this concern is not just limited to Littleton, but is also statewide. But I just feel like if, as Littleton, we are truly committed to inclusivity as one of our core values, then I don't see how restriction of this type of construction, which allows for the retainage of socioeconomic diversity, can really align with that. I hate seeing the changes that occur as some people are just forced to move out of Littleton. And I love Littleton, and I believe it's something that we should share with people and not try to hoard for ourselves.
All right, Andrew, thank you very much.
Thank you. One more reminder, if you're on the line and would like to be recognized and you have not already done so, please go ahead and press *9 now. Our next caller is going to be caller 819. Caller 819, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hi, can you hear me?
We hear you.
Thank you. This is Pam Chadbourne. I live in District 1. To some of the previous callers, there's been no evidence presented at all that 5-story buildings downtown would solve affordable housing. In fact, what's been proposed is gentrification. Please do not be naive. Council and staff have not yet presented any data or any policy or anything in the code that would require the building of affordable housing. That is a problem with Phase 2 and why it should be changed or amended, because Putting in affordable housing is hard. We need integrated income housing. Every infill resident should be required to supply either money toward affordable housing or portions of their multifamily residence as affordable housing integrated into their new infill. Please don't be naive here, folks. You need to do work to get affordable housing. It's not just going to happen with 5 stories, just the opposite. I have a lot to talk about. Gun store regulation, yes, is my brief comment there. Second, short-term rentals. Thank you, staff, for hearing and fixing some concerns. Yes, limit total occupancy by an estimate of 2 per bedroom, 8 maximum. You might want to reword. It's not so much how many per bedroom, but the occupancy per house is based on 2 per bedroom. I'm going to tell you that 12 people or 10 people will be party groups. I know this because I live next door to one that had 12. Please limit occupancy. Party houses are not compatible with Littleton or quality of life. Yes, put in parking requirements, especially in downtown. Add a limit based on the number of bathrooms. Hotels and motels have already been here. They basically have about a limit of 6 per bathroom. Do that. Don't grandfather the existing STRs. Require compliance with these limits by the next time the license is renewed. I hope there is license renewal, isn't there? Think about parity with motels and hotels. Don't drive them out. And I hope that B&Bs. I think B&Bs fit Littleton downtown and Littleton Boulevard better than STRs. Why are you setting up unfair competition with motels and hotels for such unsuitable neighbors? So think about neighbors. There's a ton of things here, but every month or so, you're going to find something on your property that doesn't belong there. There's going to be somebody next door who doesn't understand what to do. And short-term non-primary rentals should simply not be allowed. That's not how Airbnb started. This is so far from the original model, it's ridiculous. You need to think as much about neighbors as you do about these owners. The Phase 2 code amendments I sent email about, but I've made a comment. You cannot get what we want without requirements and protections in the code, which are not there now. Council, this needs more work. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pam. Next caller.
Our next caller is caller 885. Caller 885, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Go ahead, caller.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi there. My name is Maureen Whalen. I live in District 1. My family and I have lived in Littleton for about 12 years, and we adore this town. And we were so thrilled to be able to afford to move here 12 years ago when we were in our mid-20s, young professionals. It was the place that we could afford to move that had a wonderful education system and felt like a great place to raise our children. And I would just love for that opportunity to continue for upcoming families, for people starting out. I would not be able to afford to move here today if I was in the position I was in 12 years ago. Our Littleton Public Schools are amazing. I'd like to take a moment to thank all the teachers and staff and administration. There are so many complaints and concerns, but these employees are working their tails off to best serve all of our children. I think inclusivity is a core value that I am working hard to instill in my family and my children. And I would love, just for accessibility, to continue. What else do I have to say? I really love the walkability of downtown. I would really like it to be a pedestrian-friendly, bicycle-friendly, sustainable, smart growth town. And I'm learning and educating myself on how to be part of that change. And I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Sama, do we have any other callers?
We have 3 other callers. We have another caller on the line who's not pressed *9 yet. So just a last reminder, if you're on the line and would like to speak and you've not done so already, please press *9. The next caller will be 693. Caller 693, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hear you fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ivan Anaya. I am the Director of Real Estate for South Metro Housing Options. And I must say that I'm quite pleased to hear the majority of the comments that have been made by other callers today. I agree with almost everybody, everything that has been said, which is not often the case when I listen in on these calls. And so, first and foremost, I just want to, introduce myself as the Director of Real Estate for the Housing Authority. South Metro Housing Options has been the city's partner in housing since the 1970s. We are also property owners in the downtown area, and we've got over 20 commercial tenants and over 110 residential units in Libby boards, and currently are very acquisitive and looking to grow our housing stock so that we can continue to work on the quantity and diversity of housing of not just downtown Littleton, but Littleton as a whole. I'd also like to say that I do appreciate the work that has been done to date over the last few years by City Council, the Planning Commission, Historical Preservation Board, and city staff. I think that you have accomplished a lot and brought the city in many ways forward so quickly and in a very thoughtful manner. And so I do want to express appreciation for that. One thing that I really just would be remiss if I didn't comment on is phase 2, which has been commented on multiple times tonight. And I'd like to just draw your attention back to the feasibility study that was presented by EPS and Andy Knudsen back on June 30th. In his summary of findings, the first slide where he shows summary of findings, there's one line that is bolded, and that line reads: rooftops drive retail, restaurant space, additional residents in the downtown area will support existing and future retail and restaurant space. And so with that said, if we don't focus on the quantity and diversity of housing in the downtown area, I just don't see how the goals that City Council and the Planning Commission have for the downtown area would be met from a feasibility standpoint. And so, the last thing I will say is that we're in support of what has been approved by the Historic Preservation Board, the Planning Commission, and which is the current version of Phase 2. And so really look forward to your readings and your comments on that on October 6th.
Great. Thank you very much, Yvonne.
Our next caller is caller 638. Caller 638, please press *6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hi, my name is Alexis Ferrer, and I live in District 1. I was born and raised in Littleton. I attended Centennial, Goddard, and Littleton High School. I moved away for college, and I came back to this community to be close to my family and to raise my family in Littleton because I had such a treasured childhood here in the city. So I am highly invested in what the city becomes in the future and what it becomes for my children. And that's why I'm calling in tonight to support all the phase 2 amendments that have been made. It's not perfect, like another caller pointed out earlier. Definitely adjusting heights and parking ratios is not going to address affordable needs that we need. There needs to be a mandate that requires developers to have affordable units, but it's a step in the right direction. And so I just want to voice my appreciation for all the hard work that has gone in from phase 1 to phase 2. All the people have been pushing to at least make some subtle changes that will allow for a more inclusive and hopefully more diverse housing options in our community, because it's desperately needed. The idea that what the South Metro Housing survey showed or report showed is that people like my parents might not be able to afford Littleton in the future, or that Littleton Public Schools will be losing enrollees because young families can't move here and therefore might be able to cut programs like the Village that a lot of my patients' families rely on for the important services that it gives. I think that we need to work together as one community and keep looking at the direction of inclusivity in order to make sure that we have all of our values in alignment with what we're trying to do. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Great. Thank you, Alexis.
Just a final reminder, if you are on our line and would like to be recognized to speak, please press *9. Our next caller is caller 589. Caller 589, please press star 6 to unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Jeannie Erickson. I live in District 1. And I just wanted to bring up the fact tonight that most people are, but some people aren't giving their full names and where they live. Are they actually living in Littleton? If they don't know their district, they could give at least their street name, because I know that's part of the rules of speaking. Also, regarding the director of real estate for SMO that just spoke, he's talking about growing affordable housing stock. I'm very concerned about when he speaks like that, and that SMO is looking at getting rid of 71 of our single-family homes and duplexes. I'm confused as what he's saying when he's talking about growing housing stock. How are you growing affordable housing stock when you are getting rid of 71 of our single-family homes and duplexes that are currently spread around Littleton? I don't understand that. But thank you so much for your service. Goodbye.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Do we have any other callers?
Thank you, Mayor. That was our last caller with their hand raised to be recognized.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I will close the public comments. It is 7:16. Do we have any comments from our city manager?
I do not, Mayor.
No. And how about our city attorney?
No comments to the public comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. It was good to have that many callers. I think that's the most callers we've had on our Zoom meetings ever. So that's fantastic to hear from so many people. All right. We're going to move now down to we will move to, let's see, the consent agenda. And Council Member Elrod will present in it. But first, before she does, if Sarah Fox, if you could please tell us how this will proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. Consent agenda items may be adopted by a simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion. Any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member.
Great. Thank you very much. Council Member Elrod, if you would please introduce.
Consent agenda item A, resolution 67-2020, authorizing a grant application to the Colorado Department of Transportation for the Mineral Station Mobility Shed Improvements Project. I'm pulling that one.
Thank you.
Item B, resolution 68-2020, authorizing a grant application to the Colorado Department of Transportation for the Prince Street Link Project. Consent agenda item C, ordinance 34-2020, an ordinance on first reading approving phase 2 amendments to Title 10 of the City Code relative to downtown development. Consent agenda item D, number 20-230, approval of the September 1st virtual regular meeting minutes.
Council, do we have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve consent items number A, C, and D.
Second.
No.
And we have a second by Mayor Pro Tem.
It was Mayor. It was B, C, and D. A.
B, C, D.
A
yes.
Okay, excuse me. I make a motion to approve consent items B, C, D. My apologies.
There you go. Great. All righty, Council. So we do have a different recorder tonight. So when you raise your hand, please leave it up there very clearly so she can take account. So if you're in approval of A or of B, C, and D, thumbs up. If not, thumbs down. Ready? Vote.
Mayor, the vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Great. Resolution 67-2020 was pulled by Councilmember Elrod. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. My request here is unfortunately, we did not have a chance to review this at a study session. We do have 2 grants here. And these are for the Safer Main Street program grants afforded by DRCOG. This one in particular for the mineral station mobility. This is a very important intersection and corridor for us. We're doing a lot of work there as it relates to the Pell. And we know that this is an area where traffic is one of the biggest concerns for the city of Littleton. There are a number of recommendations that are being made here, and I'd really appreciate having the opportunity to look at these in particular a little bit more closely at a study session. So if we can pull it and take it to a study session to review these and understand their impacts to that corridor, I would really appreciate that.
Okay. Well, let's hear from the city manager on if there's a timing issue of any sort we need to worry about.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. No, there is not a timing issue at this point. So if the council is willing and wanting to have a discussion about this particular application, then I would suggest that we look to the study session of October 13th and that we consider a motion here to table this to a date certain of the 20th of October. I'd like to confirm that with the city attorney, but that would be my suggestion.
City attorney?
That is correct. That would be the proper procedure to move this to the 20th.
Great. Councilmember Elrod, would you like to make do you have to do a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to move Resolution 67-2020, authorizing grant application to Colorado Department of Transportation for the Mineral Station Mobility Shed Improvements Project to a date certain of October 13th, with a request of a study session as soon as feasible.
So it would be...
I think you have the dates wrong. So the study session will be October 13 and table October 20.
Okay. I'll make a motion to move Resolution 67-2020, authorizing grant application for Colorado Department of Transportation for Mineral Station Mobility Shed Improvements Project to a study session on October 13th, period.
And table to...
And table to October
20th.
20th.
There you go. All right. Thank you. We have our second. Kelly, did you say something? Kelly or Councilmember Milliman has seconded. All right. Do we have any more discussion?
Yeah.
Councilmember Driscoll?
Yes, I don't quite understand why we're pushing this along. We're simply asking to put a grant application out there, and I certainly we can discuss this, but to get through this first initial stage, to put a grant application forward, to me is a no-brainer. So I'm confused why we're having to study something where we're just putting a grant forward, not even knowing if we're getting a grant.
Any other comments? Okay, so we have a motion in this. Your hand's not up, but it looks like you want to say something. Go ahead, if you will, Councilmember Elrod.
Pat, one of the reasons that I want to take this forward, there are seven different items on there, and that is what the grant is for. So I just want to ensure that we've done some of the community outreach that's necessary, and just also know to what extent there may be and what the flexibility of the grant is. One particular item on there is about a road diet on Mineral, and I just Mineral is a particular street where we have lots of cars going through there with lots of traffic, and one of the recommendations is the road diet. So I just want to be have that clarity of those recommendations that are being presented.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I agree with Councilmember Driscoll. I think that it's premature to send this to a study session unless and until we're approved for the grant. There's no reason to belabor it now. If and when we're approved for the grant, we can put it on the agenda and talk about it then.
Thank you. Councilmember Grove.
I support Karina. I think there's some things that we need to address in here, and we don't know if we put the grant in, how much flexibility we have, if we have to stick to For example, putting a bike lane, which could pinch down the road when there's a bike lane right next to it on the Highline Canal. So I think it's worth some discussion and community input.
All right, Council Member Driscoll.
Yeah, this was put forth by staff, and at some point we have to stop nitpicking things to death when it's a simple application and not continue to, in my opinion, almost overstep. Let's let staff do their job.
Anyone else? All right, we have a motion on the table, motion and second. So let's go ahead and go to a vote. Again, if you could keep your hand up clear so that Sam can see it clearly. A thumbs up is in favor of moving this item to a study session for October 13 and tabling it to a regular meeting for October 20. So a thumbs up would be in favor and a thumbs down would be opposed. Ready, vote. Sama.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. The motion is, I apologize, keep your hands up just a second more. Okay, the motion is 3 in favor with council members Valdez, Millen, Driscoll, and Fay voting no. The motion fails.
Okay, thank you. Well, so we do need to move this, Mark, we still need to take this to another vote, do we not?
Correct. You'd need to make a motion to approve this particular item.
Okay. So I'm still looking for a motion to either approve it or just plain turn it down. Councilmember Driscoll, would you like to make that?
Yes, I move to approve the resolution authorizing a grant application to the Colorado Department of Transportation for the Minerals Station Mobility Shed Improvement Project.
Second.
And Councilmember Fay was the second. Councilmember Elrod.
I have a question for staff. If this gets approved at Dr. Cobb, what flexibility do we have and any changes?
Council, I'd probably ask our city engineer, Brent Thompson, to comment on that. I believe we do have some flexibility, but let's have Brent comment.
Yes, good evening, Council. Brent Thompson, city engineer. Yes, there would be plenty of opportunity to make design changes once, if and when we are awarded this grant.
Can you specify what design changes mean?
Anything that is proposed that you see in your resolution is conceptual at this point. So if council does have concerns about what's being proposed, we'd be happy to study that with you in more detail.
Okay. Any other questions, council? All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to approve resolution 67-2020. Samuel, we're going to get ready to vote here. So council, a thumbs up is to approve, a thumbs down is to oppose. Ready, vote.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you very much, council. All right, we have no general business. We have no second readings. So we're going to move now into, we'll take a couple minute break here. We're going to move into our study session. So it is now 7:28, unless anybody else has anything. 7:28, we are adjourned into a study session in 2 minutes, 7:30. I'd like to open up the City of Littleton City Council virtual study session for Tuesday, September 15, 2020. The time now is 7:31. All council is present. Council, we have two items tonight. Our first one is ID number 20-2027, short-term rentals and licensing. And I think what we have before is, as you know, previous council has addressed it for quite a while, and then we didn't come up with anything after about 8 months worth of work. This council's one of our top goals was to address the short-term rentals and get something out there that will be that'll be a good start at least. And that's where we are tonight, council. So we're not here to rewrite it, but we are here to discuss it. If we have some issues in there that we want to make sure that staff is needs to be aware of, and from our point of view, that's what we're here for tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to the city manager.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. Just adding on to the mayor's comments here. So a couple of months ago, council will remember we had a discussion with you about some options on how we might approach this issue. And it was the direction of council here that we go ahead and take this first major phase. My words were to take a big a bite as possible out of this issue, then look to the ULUC to kind of take care of probably the rest of the details. So here we are this evening to present to you the staff's thoughts about how we might approach kind of this first phase of short-term rentals. And I'm going to turn it over to Reed Betzing, our city attorney, and Jennifer Henninger, our community development director.
And I'm in turn going to turn it over to Jennifer.
Hang on, I had this right and I just switched screens. I apologize. All right, we're gonna go with this.
Yeah, while Jennifer's tracking that down, I will say, to add on to what City Manager Ralph was saying, one of the things that we thought of in terms of how can we address kind of the situation that we've seen a lot of neighbors have to deal with the STRs was really licensing them. There's no provision within our current code that actually requires short-term rentals to be licensed. What we've been doing in the interim is if an individual called the city to find out about their STR, we would make them get a license. There's no real provisions within our code to require that. And so far we have a few within the city that have actually complied and pulled business licenses, and some of those actually remit sales tax to the city. So I guess what staff is looking for from city council tonight, we put together an ordinance that kind of promulgates the rules as it relates to the business licensing, puts certain regulations and restrictions in place as to their operation. And so we're looking for kind of a blessing in terms of if council is okay as an interim step in addressing short-term rentals to go ahead and get some licensing in place. So with that preamble, I will give it over to Jennifer.
Excellent, thank you. So the requested council action this evening is twofold. One is we like to get your feedback on the Good Neighbor handout and letter that were included in your packet. We have put that together in conjunction with code enforcement, our city attorney, as well as our communications. So we'd like to get your feedback on those two items. We're also looking for feedback on the business licensing ordinance that we have put together for the operation of short-term rentals in the city of Littleton. Currently, our schedule on the short-term rentals is we're using existing resources such as police, code, and mediation. What we're proposing is kind of a two-step process, two phases. One is updating the license code, and that is where we are now. And the second one is phase 2, and that's going to be reconciliation of what we are recommending on STRs, and then digging more into the land use side of it during the ULUC process. But this evening, we are focusing on the business licensing.
And just to expand a little bit on that phase 2 reconciliation. So I'm sure certain council members will remember there was a citizen group that was very thoughtful, full of those persons who had concerns about STRs, as well as I believe people who operated STRs, and they came up with kind of a compromise and some suggestions in terms of what an ultimate ordinance could lead to. Some of their suggestions were differences between where STRs could be located, specifically the various different zoning districts. So if it was an owner occupied or primary rental, then that could be in a certain zoning district. And if it wasn't, then it would have to be in a different one. So as we go through the ULUC process, and as we start specifically talking about the neighborhood building block, which is due to come up for discussion, at the end of this year or the first quarter of next year, that's where staff believes it would be more appropriate to start looking at, kind of the land use issues. Where is there a particular zoning district where it's appropriate, or are there specific zoning districts where it's not? That's going to require more of a public process, and that's why we're not addressing that tonight, but recommending that we tackle that with the neighborhood building block. Sorry, Jennifer.
No, thank you for that clarification. And yes, you will see some of the aspects of that citizen group put together here this evening, but majority of it you will see in the ULUC. So in our current analysis, we actually have 43 registered short-term rentals. We do not have a specific definition for short-term rentals in the code right now. And our proposed STR business license ordinance is to provide a definition for short-term rentals, to provide license application requirements. Again, something we do not have currently. Also, the aspects that we require your license to be denied or revocation of that license, and then also restrictions on the license requirements, and then the good neighbor handout and letter we will discuss as well. So in terms of our two new definitions, we actually have a short-term non-primary rental and then a short-term primary rental. The non-primary rental, again, it's the dwelling unit is not a primary residence, and that is leased in part or in whole, where a short-term primary rental shall mean a dwelling unit that is a primary residence of which a portion is leased, and a person would be, that primary resident owner would be living on the property. Both of these types can be leased to one party at a time for periods of less than 28 consecutive days. In terms of our license application requirements, we are looking at requiring proof of ownership, also that they have liability insurance, they have a proof of residency, contact info of a local person. That is one thing that we did get a lot of feedback of. We don't know who to call, the person doesn't respond. So that is something that we've added in this licensing requirement, to have that local person. And then also to have a sales and use tax license. In terms of the license requirements and restrictions, we are now saying at this point that STRs are not permitted in accessory dwelling units. And the asterisk is there is because that may change and will be part of the discussion during the ULUC process. We're also looking at limiting 2 STR renters per bedroom with an 8 total max. Another thing that we have heard a lot about is parking issues when there are parties or large groups that are there. So really looking as part of this licensing of providing 1 parking space per bedroom, that needs to happen. And then also if STRs lack paved parking space and have to use on-street parking, they're limited to 2 on-street parking spaces going towards their allowance. And then each STR must display the good neighbor handout in a place or with the book that they have to meet Airbnb or VRBO regulations. And also that the owner of an STR must mail out the good neighbor letter to adjacent property owners. So they are aware that a short-term rental is there, and that letter would also contain the number of the emergency contact person that can be there in 2 hours. So at this point, what I like to do is take a look at the Good Neighbor Guidelines and the Hello Neighbor letter or actually just ask the question if you guys have any feedback on those, and if you think there's any additional information that we need to provide in those. Jerry,
Council, did you have any questions? We do have Council Member Grove.
The only suggestion I have on the Good Neighbor Guidelines, which is the infographic you have there, which is probably would be read by the people that are staying there, is a little stronger wording about noise and those kinds of things. Because that seems to be the big issue, is the party houses and the noise that comes from these homes.
Right. When we do get those complaints, it typically has to do with noise or parking.
I mean, you have in the welcome, you have, be respectful, but if there's something
stronger,
yeah, just a tweak.
Noted. Thank you.
Yes, good comment. Anyone else, Council? I see no more questions, Jennifer.
Excellent. So in terms of fiscal impacts of the proposed regulations, we currently do not have a fee for STR business licenses. And in business license in general, we don't have a fee nor a requirement of annual renewal. We are recommending that some type of license fee should be charged, and that's to cover administrative costs necessary to process the applications. In putting some of these regulations and requirements in place, there are going to be code enforcement costs necessary to ensure that all the regulations are being met. Also paying for a building inspector from time to time to ensure code compliance. Councilmember Grove just brought that up with one of the properties that is a short-term rental, and that has to do with building inspections. We may have to hire a possible outside consultant to monitor not only rental websites, but to also do all of the requirement checks on the licenses and doing the physical inspections of these properties. Because right now we do not have the staff to go out and do those types of inspections. And then just to give you guys an idea, so in talking to other municipalities that do have a fee associated with short-term rentals, we found that they really average between $250 and $500. I can tell you for the rental or the STRs that we have right now, and I have Tiffany on the line so she can correct my math. But basically last year, we generated about $12,000 in sales tax. That is it, from STRs. And so far this year with COVID and a lot of the Airbnbs and STRs not being able to use, we have about $1,500 in sales tax revenue so far for 9 months.
So in the proposed ordinance, we, as Jennifer said, we don't have a fee right now. A lot of it is kind of dependent on how robust council wants to be, assuming that you want to go forward with the business licensing requirements. And if we have to get host compliance or one of these outside third parties to monitor some of the actions going on. Additionally, it was a few weeks ago where Ms. Hooten brought before City Council in a study session, kind of some business licensing in terms of when we were looking at possible ways to recoup some costs that the city has to spend, and that was direction that Tiffany received to take a look at that in terms of business licensing. As Jennifer mentioned, we don't have a fee for any of our business licenses outside of kind of some alcohol and marijuana type uses. So we haven't been collecting anything, and additionally, they're in perpetuity. So there's no requirement that it renew. By at least taking the step and making them an annual license, it gives the city the ability to more easily add things to the ordinance or refine things as we take a look and see how are things going. What are some of the concerns that maybe weren't addressed or that we're hearing now that we probably should put it in the ordinance. That would be a good way to do it, is have them come in, and when they come in, it's like, well, here are the new restrictions, if you will, or regulations regarding your short-term rental.
So in conclusion, staff is recommending that we get some feedback from you guys on the ordinance and to place the item on a council agenda in October. And our alternative is for you guys to direct staff to wait until the ULUC to adopt any new regulations. So that concludes staff presentation.
All right, well, thank you, Jennifer. So again, to council, what the city manager and the city attorney are looking for is some comments, and not necessarily tonight, but maybe over the next few days, if you can, read this, give it some good thought, and then send comments on to the city manager and city attorney, and they can work that in, your comments into a revised ordinance. And when do you believe that will come back to us?
I think I probably have to look to Sam to see where we can fit that on the agenda.
Yeah, I think city manager, do you have a date?
I'm thinking maybe 20th of October. But
yeah, we had an item that was taken off of the 20th recently that was going to be take a long time. I would say the 20th is when we have budget, is when we're doing the final approval of the budget. So I'll leave that to the city manager to find a good spot. But depending on, the direction that council gives staff tonight in terms of what work we have left to do based upon those comments, I think it can be turned around in relatively short order. But as you know, STRs can generate a lot of public interest. So you have to be thoughtful of that public hearing.
Absolutely, and it did have a lot of interest on both sides last time, so I think this will be good. We do have some council questions and comments, and I think this will be a good time to start taking those. We'll start with Council Member Milliman.
Hey, Rudy, could you clarify in the ordinance whether, sorry, can you hear me? Can you clarify in the ordinance, are short-term rentals not allowed in accessory dwelling units in both primary and non-primary?
Correct. Right now, how it's proposed, right now, we don't even really define ADUs or the city in terms of if people are allowed to live in ADUs. I know that the city has heard a lot about, kind of the mother-in-law suites or having other family members to be able to move into these types of accessory dwelling units. But that's not something that our city has really gotten into in terms of defining, and something that was going to come out in the process of ULUC. I will say there's a provision in there that potentially allows, if the primary wanted to live in the ADU, which we're not going to do yet, then they would have to rent out the rest of their house. So what we don't want and what we don't envision going through the process is a standalone structure that's being rented out to, third parties coming in on a daily basis. But not until we have that bigger discussion.
Great. Thank you very much. And I know that Councilmember Milliman, as well as I, have had some thoughts about ADUs and how they'll be used in the future. So yeah, let's keep that on our charts at some point. We'll go to Councilmember Grove.
I have questions and comments. My first question is, have you thought about if we find out there's an STR that did not register and we get a complaint, then what happens?
Typically what we'll do, and it's really something that finance has taken, one of the, I guess just to talk a little bit more before I get to your question about why we would want a fee, is an STR affects, our finance department, community development, our building department, as well as code enforcement. So, there's a number of different departments that get involved. But I don't know if Tiffany's listening, but typically what the city will do if we find out that there is any business operating without a license is the city will make contact with them and get them to get licensed. There are criminal penalties, technically, even within this ordinance, for failing to obtain a business license or continuing to operate any business without a license. And so, depending, I don't see anyone going to jail the first day, not to scare anyone, but there are various levels of compliance that we can get. But generally, it starts with a call, a letter. Hey, did you know that you're actually in the city of Littleton and you need a license? And I think that resolves itself 9 times out of 10.
That's good to hear. Second, question is on renewals. If a STR has a certain number of complaints or violations or something along those lines, is there cause to pull that license? And if that license is pulled, then they would have to cease operating as an STR?
I believe that I placed that in the ordinance in terms of complaints or violations, in terms of reasons why we would either revoke or not renew a license. So that'll certainly come into play.
Okay. So I would like to support the licensing. I think it's a great idea, and I would advocate bringing it to ordinance. I think it's a great first step to see where these STRs are. I know you have a map, but there may be some that are not licensed, and to get people in compliance. And then we get a little bit of fee income from it. I know it's not a lot. And this way, I think people in the neighborhoods would have some recourse. I'd also advocate that this goes to the integrity of our neighborhoods, and I would like to see them not, no STRs in certain residential areas, but that's a whole nother issue. I would support the October 20th.
Yeah, I would say probably one of the biggest issues that council will need to deal with going forward is kind of the owner occupied, or what we call the primary and non-primary. I would say, you know, in the mountain towns, it's very common for people to rent out their homes and they're never there. When you get into the Denver metro area, what you typically see more of in terms of STR regulations, those who have actually been able to follow through, is kind of that owner occupied. So not really the non-primary, but where you actually have someone living on site, and maybe they have, you know, a finished basement or a separate entrance. And that's where we typically see a lot of. So that's not something that this ordinance does, but it's something that we need to discuss as, you know, as council going forward in terms of what council is comfortable doing. So
I would advocate the step-by-step approach. I think works really well. And I know this is only 40 properties or some similar, but when we get email after email from the neighbor that has to put up with this on a daily basis, these are painful things to read. And my heart goes out to them because they are having neighbors turn over every other day or every other week or whatever, and they just are not part of the community, and they just don't treat their neighbors in many cases very well.
Great, thank you. And this is the beginning of finally getting a license in place where we can start having some enforcement. So that's
yes, good. Great.
Any other? She is finished. We have Council Member Elrod, then Driscoll.
I like that we're approaching this from first from the licensing perspective. That is, I think, where we got upside down last time. And I think we've always taken the stance that, you know, knowing who these short-term rentals are, where they're located, and helping them be good neighbors. So thank you for the letters. I support those and the good neighbor information on the licensing. I am very much in supportive of that. I'm in supportive of it being an annual renewal license, and I'm in supportive of that annual renewal license having a fee attached to it. That is, I have a short-term rental here in Frisco, and that's exactly how they do it. And it is well done, right? It gives the property owner kind of skin in the game every year to say, is this still worth it, viable for me? And it also gives an opportunity for that property owner to be aware of any changes that may happen year to year. So I think that's a very sensible approach. The range of 250 to 500 seems a little bit on the high end, and I don't know if that's maybe just one-time fees, but if we are going on an annual basis, I think it has to be a little bit more reasonable and equitable to, you know, the reasons we charge fees as a city. So I just would look at that. Again, I can speak for Frisco, it's 125 here in Frisco. The other thing on the fees, given that we don't charge it for any other business license, again, I think there's just you know, something that we should manage here with this being the first business license fee that we're charging. So let's be fair about that. The thing that I do want to maybe suggest a couple of things that I do think we should look at a little bit is the 2 per bedroom. And then when you read a little bit further, that's actually 2 adults per bedroom. So does that mean 4 kids can be in a bedroom? So some of that starts getting a little complicated and hard to verify, hard to regulate. Again, I'll speak from what I'm seeing here is that it does have the 2 bedroom limit, 2 per bedroom plus a number, plus 2 or plus 4. So I'll speak for myself and my family. It's me and my brother, our kids, and my dad. We want to get together in a home, and we wouldn't be able to do that, right, under the current scenario. So the 8 really limits it to, call it the nucleus family of 2 kids, a couple. So I think that's a little limited. I would suggest to keep it simple, 2 per bedroom plus 2 or plus 4. And even set that maximum at 12 if we would want to set it at some number. So I'd ask for a little bit of research on that.
Yeah, I will just jump in and say that the citizen group, they actually have proposed a maximum of 6. So while I did appreciate all the work that they had put in, and looking at what other jurisdictions had done, 8 kind of seemed to be in that comfort area, but there's certainly room to move on that if council directs us to do that. Not too hard to change.
Yeah, I think some of this, of course, also comes into that ULUC when you think about homes in Littleton are primarily 4-bedroom homes. So you quickly can get to that 8, but you could also have 4 kids in a room, or you can have a sofa sleeper, right? So I'm just thinking about the families and how families use Airbnbs, and just to allow that a little bit more ability there. On the parking recommendation that I will make is for one of the things we just have to be careful of is I think we should put a maximum on parking too. We don't want people, kind of plowing, turning their whole front yard into a driveway just so they can meet this requirement. Again, I'll say what is being done here. It is one, as you've recommended, 1 parking space per bedroom with a minimum of 2 spots and a maximum of 4, which could be in like a common parking area or even on street, but then they require like a parking permit for that. So we could require a parking permit for that on-street parking, for example. So I think that's it as far as recommendations. And now I have one question.
Okay. And hopefully it's a short one because we have some other council members that want to get in.
Yep, this is my, I just have one question here.
Thank you.
The categorization of primary versus non-primary. So you talked about, we really have to get into that at the ULUC. And so that I actually, I would rather take that particular piece because it's different. For the primary, it's only a portion of your house. And the non-primary, you can rent the whole house. So that actually seems inverse logic to me. I would think that someone that has a primary residence, you see them, call it 9 months out of the year. Maybe they winter over in Florida. They're renting their house for a month. Your neighbor, they're there. So I could see them actually, I just think they should be equal. It's either, in either case, whether it's primary or non-primary, I would have, a portion of your house or your whole house, and then keep it consistent, at least for now, until we go neighborhood by neighborhood and really understand the nuances by neighborhood on that one. Sorry, I got a comment instead of a question.
Yeah, that was good. That was a good one. All right. Thank you very much. We'll go to Councilmember Driscoll, then Fay.
Yes, just wanted to thank Jennifer and her team for putting this together. I think this is a great first draft and some good talking points. I would also second what Pam and Karina were saying about creating a license. I don't think the city has the financial wherewithal to send an inspector out to these homes. And I do think it should be whatever that number is, it should be enough to cover the expenses of the city. And again, the renewal fee, obviously not as much. Once we go out there and make sure they have carbon monoxide and smoke detectors and everything's in place, then it's not such a big deal. But I do believe we should have a renewal fee, and I would like to see some type of penalty for people that don't get licensed and think they can just go underneath the radar. And I would like to see some type of penalty for that that's enforceable.
Great. All right. Thank you. Council Member Fay.
Heartily agree with what Councilmember Driscoll just now said. I would very much want the fee to cover the actual cost of what it costs the city to add this additional chore, and it is sizable, to the things to do. I see Jennifer nodding. Yes, so let's make sure that we charge the people who are benefiting from this, and that would be the people who are making a sizable amount of money by renting out a house this way, rather than renting it out as a regular leased rental. Huge amount of money difference. So they can certainly afford it. And then I especially appreciate Councilmember Driscoll's suggestion that there be a penalty for not registering. I think that the penalty needs to be bigger than registering, that a person gives it a second thought before they go, let them find me. Let's give them a motivation to be identified. Councilmember Elrod's venture into details put my stomach in my throat. It so much reminded me of, and this is nothing personal, but the whole council last time around, different council, 4 of us were on that council, 3 of us weren't. It became so incredibly painful dealing with tiny little things, which I think is probably staff is able to do that well. Council got all embroiled in that. And we went around and around and around for 9 months in the details, and ended up voting it down. 2 people voted for what we had worked on for 9 months, and 5 council members voted against it. Council, I'm sounding, please, let's not do that again. Please, let's stay at the level where we belong as council members, at the policy level, and let staff do the details.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Fay. I'm up next, and then it'll be Councilmember Grove. A couple items I just want to make sure we remain focused on is the parking issue. Having cars all over that neighborhood, from one particular house could be a problem. So I want to keep focused on that. Also, the fees, I want to make sure our fees are appropriate. I don't want to lowball this thing. Also, the noise. I want to make sure we have some good tools to deal with the noise. And I think Councilmember Elrod, you had lots of great suggestions there, and I bet you have more too. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of those. And Councilmember Fay, you're absolutely right. We got bogged down last time, and maybe council got too involved, not in the policy part of this. And so we do need to remember we're a part of the policy. And that's why staff is looking for council to send your comments and concerns or suggestions to the city manager and the city attorney. So if you will, we'll move to Councilmember Grove, then Mayor Pro Tem.
Quick comment in response to Councilmember Elrod. There's a big difference between the short-term rentals where somebody's in the home and it's an absentee owner, especially in the neighborhood. When there's an owner there, they tend to be smaller, fewer people, and they manage noise levels and parking and all those issues. Where somebody that's not there, that's when we see more of the problems, run down properties, etc. So I think we need to keep them separate.
Great, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
I want to thank the community group who put so much time and effort into their draft proposals. They did exactly what we want stakeholders to an issue to do, which is the two sides got together and they tried to think creatively. They tried to dialogue and come up with something. And so I really appreciate that. And I'm grateful that at least some of their ideas have found their way into this first step of the city's short-term rental policy. I definitely want to thank city staff for getting us to this point. I think it is high time for the city to move in the direction of implementing some regulation. And I think just given council's history on this issue, where maybe I can fairly say that the perfect became the enemy of the good, I think we can let reality instruct us on where we need further regulation, and then we can go ahead and we can regulate. For me, the balance to strike on this issue has always been letting short-term rental owners make, put their property to reasonable use on the one hand, and then on the other hand, let the neighbors, have their right of quiet enjoyment of their property. And I think that this first step moves us in those directions. I agree with a lot of what council has said in terms of making the fee actually match the cost to the city of administering short-term rentals and so on. I do long-term want to see us really sharpen our teeth as a city when it comes to enforcement, right? When push comes to shove, I think that the city needs to come down in favor of protecting neighbors' right of quiet enjoyment. And I think we need to make certain that we're doing that pretty aggressively, honestly. And I think we need to send some messages right off the bat, right? People need to be licensed. If they're running afoul of the rules, they need to have their licenses revoked. I would not think it's an overreaction on the part of the city to refer some of these bad actors into the municipal court. I think that protects the neighborhood, and I also think it protects the vast majority of our short-term rental owners who are running a good business that does not take away from the neighborhood. So long term, I definitely want to see some very strong enforcement mechanisms in here. And I think that we could even go so far as putting some of our penalty provisions as a city onto that good neighbor handout, right? If you're violating noise ordinances, you could end up in municipal court facing a fine of $2,650 a year in jail. Not that we would ever put somebody in jail for this, but I think people need to know that the city is serious.
Yeah. Well put. I agree with you on all those comments. I know last time when this came before us, that we had lots of people that were property owners, some of them neighbors, lots of people for, some against, but it was quite the issue. I think it's a lot different on Zoom when you don't have the people in front of you to hear from them one way or another. So that's one of the difficulties of Zoom. But it's a tougher issue. It is a tough issue. And Scott, I absolutely agree with those comments you just made. Absolutely. We have City Manager. Would you like to comment?
Yes, please, Mayor, Council. I want to just kind of summarize a little bit about what I'm hearing here and maybe turn to Reed and Jennifer to kind of confirm. First, I'm hearing a little bit of a sense of urgency on the part of council to get something in place here. I know on the tentative calendar, we had the first reading of a potential ordinance here on the 20th of October with a public hearing on November 3rd. And much like Reed, our city attorney, was commenting, we're trying to position that so that it's basically a night that's free on November 3rd in case we do have a large turnout. Based on our history, that was certainly the case. So if that is maybe the target, I just want to make sure that some of the issues that we discussed here, that there's enough consensus that we can move forward here quickly without another study session. And the one issue in particular, I just want to make sure that I heard Councilmember Elrod talk about the maximum number of people in the short-term rental. Currently, the draft ordinance is at 8. If there's more conversation and direction around that, I would appreciate that, Mayor, so that we could probably move more promptly here on the 20th.
Great, absolutely. Absolutely.
And maybe a solution is, just 8 adults, and that way we get the children kind of out of the mix in terms of kind of that max limit. But just throwing it out there.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. It sounds like you've got something to work with. I think it does sound as though council does want to keep moving forward on this at a rapid pace.
So
We do have a
Jerry,
couple.
can I?
Oh, sure.
Sorry. I think what I'm looking for is there a consensus with moving forward with the 8, or as Councilwoman Ella was stating, maybe it goes up to 12. We do have a recommendation from that citizen group of 6. So I'm looking for direction from you all of what that number you're comfortable with at this time.
Well, let's. We do have a couple more questions coming out of council here, but I'm comfortable with 8 myself. I don't know about the other folks. We'll have to go around the horn to give you some direction on what we'd like to see. Are you ready for some direction on that now?
Yes, please.
Great. Well, let's just go around the horn if you don't mind, council. And this is just throw out the number that you would like to limit the total number of, and it's written as people, if I'm not correct, Jennifer?
Correct. Do we want to limit it to 8, or Reed's suggestion out there is 8 adults and children don't count?
All right, so that's kind of adds to that. So I'll just start with Councilmember Driscoll, then we'll go to Councilmember Elrod. What is your preference to give direction to staff?
Yeah, 8 is total, not children and adults. 8 total. I'm in favor of what's proposed.
Thank you, Councilmember Elrod.
I like Reed's recommendation there, limit to 8 adults, and children aren't part of that mix. I think that aligns also with the 2 adult per bedroom limit.
Thank you. Councilmember Fay, then Grove.
Prefer 6 adults and not paying attention to children under 12.
Thank you. Councilmember Grove.
8 total.
I'm sorry, what did you say again?
8 people total.
8 total. Okay, thank you. All right, Councilmember Milliman.
8 total as well. I had an administrative question for Mark.
I think, did you say 8? You didn't come through.
Yeah, sorry, 8. I don't know what's wrong with my microphone. 8 total. And then Mark, do we have a meeting on election night on November 3rd?
Well, maybe that's why it's pretty free at the moment. So
okay.
It won't be the first time we've had meetings on elections.
Yeah, I'll look at that and discuss it with the mayor. Thank you.
So Kelly,
8 total.
8 was your total.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 8 was your total. Mayor Pro Tem.
8 total.
8 total, and I'm good with that as well. 8. All right. So we do have a couple of questions. Scott, you still have your hand up.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why.
Okay.
I'll lower it.
All right. Thank you. Councilmember Driscoll, and then I think that's it. Nope. Wait, no question from Patrick now.
No,
we have no more questions.
I lowered my hand too. Sorry about that.
Okay, sorry. All right. If we have no more questions, do you have enough direction? And council, we want to make sure you send your comments, additional comments, to city manager and city attorney so that they can do their thing. Jennifer?
I can just ask a couple more clarifying questions.
Sure.
Something else that was brought up is having a number of violations, like kind of a 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing. So do we have a thought, and I guess I can get Reed to weigh in on this too, like, do we want to put a number, like you can have 2 violations and after that, it's going to come in front of us?
I would recommend that we leave it as is and
Okay.
judge it based upon the severity of the violation. Most likely what we'll have to do, which I may need to ferret out a little bit more, is kind of that process that would go in, that due process requirement for taking a license away. Leave that up to the person making that decision. So.
Okay, and then
Jail cards.
and then in regards to Karina's other question about talking about non-primary and primary, Karina, are you suggesting that we just have a short-term rental definition and not at this point differentiate between primary and non-primary?
Correct. And the reason I say that is, one, that's exactly what we're trying to do through the ULUC, is to understand what types of properties, and uses we have in the different area. What also doesn't seem to align for me is that we would allow a non-property owner, so let's call it a second home, or just a property that I'm buying for an investment, to be a short-term rental and rent the whole property. So I, as a property owner, am even more disconnected than I would be if I was a primary resident, right, to the community. So it actually seems flipped in some regard. But again, to me, it just sounds like that's one that I think is worth more understanding and discussion. And I think at least at this juncture, what we're trying to do is keep this simple, as Carol also alluded to, about, what can we manage? How do we keep it simple for our neighbors? Now they have to determine, is this house owned by a primary? Is it a primary resident? Is it not? And even for US staff. So I think at this juncture, I think to just, be agnostic to primary or non-primary seems more sensible.
So currently, within the ordinance, while we've broken it out into primary and non-primary, there is currently not a difference between the two.
There is, from the way it was presented and in the legislative text.
Do you understand the concern that she's
Yes.
expressing?
So
I think
there is no difference, then it's a non-concern, but it was presented. Let me just read it to you. On page, the two new definitions, short-term primary. It's when a portion.
Page 3.
And then the short-term non-primary says when in part or in whole. So right now there is a difference, at least how it was in the presentation and in the legislative text. They are equal, then I have no comments on that. That's
I was
fine.
referring to, at this point, the license requirements and restrictions for each of those, they're identical. So I appreciate what you're saying in terms of being.
I think you got the point she's trying to get to there, if you can work with that. All right. Any other clarifications you need, Jennifer?
The parking. We had, Karina, you had put out there they could have a maximum number of parking spots rather than it going up.
I think, so in your recommendation, it was one parking spot, a minimum.
Minimum.
A minimum parking. Did you have a minimum parking of 2?
That you had to provide 2 spots. I think that is correct.
I think in somewhere in the ordinance, I read 1 parking spot per bedroom.
Correct.
So if there's 5, you would expect them to have 5 parking spots. I don't know that we want that. I would leave it to you guys to maybe just revisit it.
Take a look. That's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah, like a garage. If we have a garage, they need to use a garage if possible. So it could be a 2-car garage, 3-car garage. Any other clarifying?
And just my final thing is, and Tiffany can jump in here, we did go through a cost of services study, and I think we could probably use some of that data to arrive on what might be an initial application fee and then an annual license fee. Is that correct, Tiffany? Do we think we can tease that out of the data that we have?
Include an inspection fee also?
What's that again, Patrick?
Include an inspection fee also? There's more than just those 2 fees.
That is correct.
Tiffany?
Yeah, I think we can utilize a cost of service model of some sort to come up with some defensible fees. We'll just need to include all of the portions related to it.
Okay. I see no more questions or comments at this time, but again, send them to city manager, city attorney, so they can make sure they address whatever thoughts. Looks like Councilmember Grove is raising her hand, physical hand.
I did have my hand up over here. In terms of fees and inspection fees, in order not to have a consultant to manage all this, can it just be passive only if there's a complaint? And somebody from the city has to go out and inspect, then the person is charged. Otherwise, you assume that people are in compliance. Just a thought.
All right. Right.
Reed, is there any liability on the city if we go forward with this STR and we are telling our renters that they need to have fire and carbon monoxide detectors and we don't validate they have that?
We do that now. So no, there's not going to be an increase in liability for the city.
Okay.
Great. All right. Mark or city attorney, do you either of you have any other comments you want to make or have questions still for us?
No, I'm good on my end.
Great.
I think Jennifer and I have the direction we need. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for the
Very
clarification.
complex when you get down to the nitty gritty. It's definitely. And this won't be the end of it. Once we do pass something, I imagine from time to time it's going to need to be tweaked.
That's the history of the issue.
Yep.
It sure is. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our last item tonight, which is 1B ID number 20-229. It's the gun store regulations. And again, this is something that the city attorney has put together because we're not covered very well on this type of thing. So I think this is mainly just going to be presented to us as information at this point to say that we need to do something. Is this correct, Reed?
That is correct. I think you framed the issue very well. Obviously, everyone is aware of kind of the incident that happened at one of our local gun dealerships, if you will, and the concerns that a lot of citizens in the area raised as a result of it. So Chief Stevens is with us tonight, and I was going to let kind of the chief talk about this particular incident in particular. The end direction that I think we're asking of council at the end of this is if council feels it's okay to start adopting some sort of regulations for those selling firearms. Right now, as we mentioned, that as part of the STR, we don't really have a very robust licensing program for very many types of businesses. We don't have anything specific as it relates to gun stores. So for this particular application, the one requirement that they really had, other than an alarm system, was putting up bollards, those pillars in front of the doors, so that you can't drive a vehicle through it. Other than that, we didn't have any other conditions attached with their application that they went through. So by potentially developing a licensing procedure, that's a way that we can actually put some more stricter guidelines in place to help kind of ensure the safety of our community. So if it's all right with everyone, I'd like to have Chief Stevens kind of get into this most recent issue and while we're here.
Great. It's always good to hear from the chief.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Reed. So, Reed really touched on it. We have some legitimate community safety concerns surrounding the burglaries to, licensed gun, or not licensed, but it's retail gun stores that sell firearms. And really what it comes down to is we're seeking guidance from council on a way that we can enhance that safety through promoting responsible business practices that would reduce the risk of losing firearms in burglaries. And we've had, as you can see in the council communication, if we go back 4 years or so, we've had 10 burglaries at 6 different firearms locations in the city. That's resulted in 144 guns illegally entering the streets in the community. So that's just unacceptable. And what we found is, in the past, there's been a particular type of method that's been used by different groups of individuals that have been burglarizing gun stores specifically. But that has changed. So those people that were responsible a couple of years ago have been arrested. There's new people doing it now. They're doing different things. They're just breaking glass. Before they were driving stolen cars through the fronts of buildings. Now they're just breaking regular glass and going in. But the bottom line is, and I've always said to council and to business owners that the single most important thing we can do, and there's a number of things we can do, but the single most important thing we can do to prevent gun store burglaries is to lock up the guns, at night in gun safes or a secure safe room in a building. So gun safes will prevent these thefts, in my opinion, for the most part. I mean, they'll at least give officers time to respond to alarm calls and apprehend some of these people possibly. So there's a list of options there on the council communication. We believe in a layered defense that includes burglar alarms, locking weapons up. There's nothing to steal if it's locked up. And that's kind of what it comes down to, and our ability to make that happen, because we just had too many times where they have not been secured properly.
Chief, would it be helpful if I brought up the interior photo of this most recent one?
If you'd like to, yeah, that would be just an example of, a particular business that was a victim of a burglary, but you'll get an idea if Reed can share his screen on what we're talking about here. So this is a closed business. On these walls, you see, I think it's like 24 unsecured long guns, many of them assault rifles. You just walk up and pull those off the wall if you can defeat the exterior security, which in this case was a glass break, and then defeating a pretty low quality, in my opinion, security gate. So we have video of this entire burglary from inside the business, and these individuals running out in less than 3 minutes and stole 52 weapons. Luckily, they did not get these rifles off the wall. They just took handguns out of cases, but it could have been much worse. But this gives you an example of kind of what we're talking about. Just no step taken to secure these weapons other than locking the doors and setting the alarm. You can drop that down off, Reed. Thanks.
And what that picture wasn't showing is in the very back of that room where there's 4 more cases, and it's just loaded with handguns right there by the entrance.
Yeah, not anymore, because they were taken during that burglary. So that's where the weapons were taken, including 2 fully automatic, which are machine guns, were taken from that business during that burglary. So all unsecured, other than the closed business doors.
Yeah.
So like I say, like I have presented in the council communication, there's a lot of options, but really it's going to come down to, what can we do as a city to, and maybe it's through licensing like Reed was talking, but, we welcome your guidance on what direction we should head in this. But as the chief of police, I don't think there's any more single threat to our community than illegal firearms out there for violent crime. So I'm really concerned about it. We've tried to work cooperatively with gun store owners, and we do have responsible people in the city. Not that these folks are irresponsible, but it's just to the point now where I think something else needs to be done probably.
And I would say probably the 2 main suggestions that I think we have, one, as the chief mentioned, securing the firearms. So in non-business hours, once you're closed, you're going to have to put those in a gun safe. The chief has done kind of some estimates in terms of, it obviously depends on how many guns you're actually storing, how much that would cost. And anywhere between, $5,000 for, a gun safe or safes with the ability to hold that many weapons, it's probably the going rate for that. We are thoughtful of the fact that it's going to cost staff time, not necessarily our time, but for that gun store, if they're going to have to secure all their weapons, if they want to have everything on display every time, then you know what? It's going to be an additional step for you at the end of the night to go put everything in a gun safe as well as opening in the morning. So cognizant of that, but I think the chief has been right on in terms of its safety. It's neighborhood safety, and it's the safety of our community. Not all these weapons were recovered. They're still out there. So the second issue, and as it relates to a recent burglary, one of the things that's not necessarily uncommon was the burglar alarm. So a alarm goes off, and that call typically goes to kind of what we'll call them the registered agent, if you will. That person who's, the manager on duty, that's the first call. In this particular case, what happened is that's what happened. The burglar alarm came off or went off. They contacted either the owner or the manager, whoever it was who was supposed to respond to that, and then ultimately was relayed to PD. By the time that our police department was able to get to this location, they were gone. And perhaps that could have been, changed if that call had come directly to the Littleton Police Department dispatch. So, Chief, I don't know if you're willing to talk very much about the aspects of that or your response time. I don't want to give away any security details, if you will, but.
No, Reed, I appreciate that. But, in a lot of these burglaries, you've seen video on the news or whatnot where they're very quick, whether it's guns or bikes or other stuff that they're trying to steal, they're in and out of these places in just a few minutes. But in the last burglary that we had here of a gun store in Littleton, there was a several minute delay. I can't say it was an unreasonable delay. It wasn't, 20, 30 minutes, but just 5 minutes delay where the alarm company is trying to contact an owner prior to calling the police. In this burglary, from the time we were notified of the burglar alarm to the time we had officers on scene was under 3 minutes. So, but that was, 5 minutes after the burglary had occurred is when we were notified. So it gets challenging. I can't say it's unreasonable or it's not fair for me to say that we would get there immediately and catch folks, but I think it's a bigger deterrent if we are there. And I understand the reasons that alarm companies and business owners do this because, we have in the past, we being law enforcement or other cities, not necessarily Littleton, but other cities that I've worked in have fined businesses for false alarms because it's considered a waste of police resources to repeatedly respond to a single business on multiple false alarms. But I can tell you, and I think you would all agree that I don't think the police department has any problem responding to alarms on a business like this, a gun store where, if we do identify a pattern of, maybe a defective alarm system or alarm system that needs some assistance, we can work with those owners and that alarm system company to rectify that. But I would much rather respond on 100 false alarms at a gun store than miss one that is legitimate and have, 100 guns out there on the street. So that's one. And as Reed was saying, I'd like to comment too on I understand the hardship it does place on business owners to have to lock up 150 guns if that's what their inventory is every night, and then also get those back out in the morning. It's going to add time. It's going to add hours to their employees' work. It's also going to add the potential for damage to some of these weapons. One of the complaints that we heard or concerns that we heard previously, we've talked to owners about these things is, it would scratch the weapons or things like that. But, I'm past the point where to me that makes sense. I mean, I'm to the point now where I just think that it's, that's any responsible gun owner in the country has a gun safe or at their home or whatever, where they lock up their weapons and some way to secure their weapons to do that. When you're a business, and we know from arrests that we have made that criminals case these establishments as they do other burglary establishments too, but specifically gun stores, and they're looking for specific inventory. They're looking for how it's secured. They're doing they're gathering intelligence to see, these burglars knew that they could get in and out of this last one very quickly and get a lot of weapons, and they did so.
Great. All right. Anything else, City Attorney?
I think that kind of frames the issue for council. So obviously this occurred relatively recently, and as Chief Stevens mentioned, they got away with 52 guns in a very short amount of time. So what we're looking for is direction from council. If council wants the city to put together business regulations for those selling firearms. And what we proposed, just on the very base of it, is you have to secure your weapons in a gun safe. during non-working hours. That would be one of the asks, if you will, or one of the requirements, licensing requirements that we would be asking if council would be comfortable with. Additionally, making sure that those burglar alarms or that alarm company is required to contact LPD dispatch, either contemporaneously with contacting the owner, but just to give us as much notice as we can. What's in the council communication as well as Chief Stevens and his staff have always been willing to meet with any of these business owners, whether it's a gun store or any other business. They're trained in providing assessments in terms of, you may want to think about this, you may want to think about that. And I know Chief has mentioned it, but I'm not to speak for Chief, but I know, his officers are more than willing to meet with any business owner, gun store or not, to think of ways to kind of harden your store or your business. So that's what we're asking. So I guess it's a bit of a three-parter in the sense of, one, do you want business regulations for gun stores? Two, if you do want business regulations for gun stores, do you want there to be a requirement that they secure weapons and a gun safe? And two or three, if you do you want them also to have LPD as the first point of contact for alarms? Chief, did I leave anything out in terms of our asks?
No, Reed, I think that covers it. And, I'm a huge Second Amendment proponent. I've been vocal about supporting individuals' rights to have weapons. I support business owners that sell weapons. And I just really am concerned about community safety. I don't want to do cause anything or suggesting that would be an undue hardship on a business, especially now, but I just think that this is not an unreasonable ask to take reasonable precautions to prevent theft of these firearms. They need to be secured in a reasonable and appropriate manner when the business is closed. And I think that'd be helpful.
Great. So, Council, I think what we're being asked here from the city attorney is that to take direction on whether or not they should draft regulations in regards to securing arms, and also on how the police department will be notified, in what order of that will take place. Is there any, before we get into questions, is there any concerns or anyone who's opposed to those three items with the city attorney taking action on that? I don't see any opposition to that, Reed. So if you could put together something for us. And Chief, thank you for your presentation. The staff communication was excellent. Without being all wordy, it really did spell out what the issue was. So thank you very much on that. We do have a few questions here. We'll start with Councilmember Elrod, then Fay.
Thank you, Chief. So are you envisioning that retailers would be, truly anyone that may sell guns? So not just a gun store, pawn shop, and even big box stores like Walmart's or Cabela's, I believe, sell guns. So would that apply? Are you envisioning that it would apply across the board?
Is that one for Reed or me?
Whoever can answer it.
I think it would be appropriate to be across the board. I say anybody that sells firearms, and we do have a number of pawn shops in town that do sell firearms, and some of them do secure the weapons in safes, and some have not in the past. But yeah, I think it would be reasonable to expect anybody that has firearms for sale that they do secure those during non-business hours.
Great. My second, I think it's a comment. I would like you to also consider in this case, just like we just did for a short-term rental, an application fee. Again, a fair one, just for the cost to essentially have you inspect that it's meeting all the requirements that we are setting for these stores or these businesses, and maybe again an annual renewal just to ensure that everything is still up to par.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Fay, and then Milliman.
I'm very much in favor of doing all of the things you're proposing. Very, very much in favor of it. I'm really disappointed in this business. The owners guaranteed me personally that the measures that they would take, having security, which stemmed from a citizen neighborhood across the street from them that was very, very concerned about guns getting loose in their neighborhood. And they assured us again and again of the many things they would do to make sure that the guns were secured, including an automatic drop gate that would secure, that police would be called as soon as a window was broken, directly called, and smoke would be released so that no one could see anything, on and on and on. I feel really betrayed by those owners, and it reinforces that they need the help from the community to do what needs to be done. They knew what needed to be done. They just, for whatever reason, didn't do it. The comparison I think of is that we expect a bank to lock up their money when the bank is closed. We expect a jewelry store to lock up their jewelry when the store is closed, and we would expect a gun dealer to lock up their products too when it's closed. It seems like a simple enough thing to do. So yes, I'm very, very much in favor of it. And thank you, Chief, for bringing this all forward.
Thank you, Karen. And I agree with you. I don't know if portray is the right word, but I totally agree with you on my feelings on that as well, what we were told and what actually happened. And I think Karina was there, and I think Councilmember Driscoll was too. We have Councilmember Milliman and then Driscoll.
Chief and Reed, thank you so much for putting all this together. And I wholeheartedly support everything that you're proposing, and appreciate that. And I agree with Councilmember Fay. I was thinking about that. You know, it's one thing if a jewelry store gets broken into and some gold gets stolen, big whoop-de-doo. These are weapons that are used to harm or kill other human beings, and it's just disgusting that they couldn't be a more responsible business owner in our community, and it's really just disappointing and disheartening. I have a question for the chief. Is it mandatory for LPD to inspect these or to provide suggestions or ideas or whatever on alarm systems? Is it mandatory? And if it's not, could that be written into the ordinance?
There's currently no requirement that we're consulted on any of the things that we're suggesting for any business at this point. The alarms systems and whatnot. I've always said for alarm systems, there's a good audible alarm system is helpful, for a residence, something makes a loud noise and draws people attention to it. Of course, when you get the false alarms on that one, it's just horrible for your neighbors and whatnot, but it's a good deterrent. I'm not going to stick around if I'm a burglar in a business or anything with the big alarm blaring. Monitored alarms are good, the ones that go to the alarm companies, if they are quickly relayed to law enforcement, I believe. So I think that a proposal here would be that, especially in this type of business, that we are one of the first points of contact so that we can get there quicker and try to, in Littleton, we're lucky because we have not a large geographic area, and we always have officers, obviously, almost, close in most cases. We can get most places in the city within just a few minutes. So, and I can tell you our officers would treat a burglar alarm at a gun store a little bit differently than a burglar alarm at a closed restaurant, for example, just based on the threat, but, and as far as this particular business that we're talking about, the recent burglary, I believe that they're the only firearms exclusive retailer in the city right now. The other ones that have been involved in the past have closed, and over the years, we do still have pawn shops. In this business that we were talking about, they did take a number of precautions, but in my opinion, I wasn't privy to the conversations they had with council members about specifics, but in my opinion, it wasn't what should have been done entirely. So, but again, regardless of the type, you could have the most expensive alarm system in the world with all kinds of craziness, smoke and lasers and all kinds of stuff to do it like you'd see on Mission Impossible. If you lock up the guns in a relatively inexpensive, in my opinion, gun safe, it doesn't matter. They're not going to be able to get that out of there very quickly. They're not going to be able to defeat that safe. That's not going to happen. A professional safe cracker could not defeat those safes very quickly. If we have an alarm trip and someone's in there, trying to get a safe out, I'm guessing we would probably get there before they could get that out of there. So, so we have no requirements. I think what we're looking for here is, and Reed will do some research and we'll help with that on what we could do through licensing so that we would then be interjected into that process so that we could make sure that we're having some reasonable practices take place.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yeah, Chief, when I go into like Sportsman's Warehouse or Cabela's, I see cable running through their guns. Are any of those guns secured with any type of cable? Are they secured at all whatsoever at this particular gun store?
No, they were not.
Do you find that cable to be worth anything, or is that just a simple cut?
Well, we have had a burglary that occurred at a former firearms dealer that did have a cable system running through it, and they lost 22 weapons that were secured with cables. Yeah. So they were able to beat the cables pretty quickly on that burglary and did get 22 weapons out of that place. So
yeah, let's lock them up.
Yeah, I think locking them up is the best method.
Unless we can create those doors that you lock the burglars inside. When they pull that first gun off the wall, then the walls go up around them. Yeah. Lock them inside.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Council, I see no more questions. Reed, I think you have some direction where to go with this.
Yes, we've got perfect direction. Thank you very much.
And before we get into our reports, I'm going to get to you, City Attorney. I'm going to ask you a question. I had mentioned for council to send comments and emails to you and to City Manager. When we get to your report, if you could just give us the legal description of what we can do and cannot do, so that the public can still be informed of what is taking place with legislation. So we'll go to our reports. We'll go to the City Manager first.
Mayor, no report this evening. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Reed, he didn't take up your time.
He took up enough. I don't have a report for you tonight, Mayor.
Yeah. Can you just address the comment that I made on how the public can know that we're not trying to do business behind doors here by sending in comments and things like that to help draft whatever ordinances that you're putting together?
No, and I would say, when we go through an ordinance process, that's a legislative process. So when you go through the legislative process, council's talking to any number of members of the public, getting input from them in terms of how that information then becomes part of our ordinances, part of our city's laws. So that information is conveyed to me. It's not shared with the rest of council. We're not having open meetings law violations or anything like that. I then take those suggestions and work with staff, and we find opportunities to, if they're good suggestions, which most of the time they are, find opportunities to address that within our ordinances. So that's typically how that process goes, Mayor.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for addressing that. Did you have anything else?
No, Mayor. Thank you.
Great. Council, if we have nothing else, it is 8:49 and we are adjourned. Have a good one. Thank you.